The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hi, welcome to The Ring and All Other Sports. My name is Leo Connors. I'm your host, and my special guest tonight is owner-trainer from Hollows Stable, Mike Hollow.
How are you, Leo? Nice to
Good,
see you.
nice
Great to
see
be
you
here.
too. Thank you
Awesome.
very much. Guys, 3 years ago today, I started the show with my first guest was Mr. Pat Dillon of UFO Wrestling. Again, Pat, love you. Thank you very much. Mike, let's get right into it.
Sure, let's go.
Mike, where'd you grow up?
Saugus, Mass.
Saugus, nice. When did you first see pro wrestling?
God, I think I was a little kid, 5 years old, sitting home on a Saturday morning and came on TV and I was hooked.
Nice. Do you remember the first person you saw?
It was probably Kowalski.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
My first was Cheap Jay. But were your friends into wrestling, like the kid you went to school with and chummed around with?
No, not really. I think it was just something that I, gravitated towards and
Right.
just stuck with, and here we are today.
Nice. Now, you broke into the business the unconventional way.
Yeah.
As ring crew for WWF. How did that all come about?
Funny story. Just I went to a WCW show or an NWA show, and I just happened to be, sitting in my seat, and I don't know what the hell I did. I ended up spilling pizza on my shirt, and the guy that was sitting next to me said, "Hey kid, you spilled pizza on your shirt." It was Freddie Spada.
Oh, wow.
And Freddie at the time was there spying for the office in terms of, who was doing what, on the show that night. And, we ended up becoming friends. And I had just finished up school, and he said, "Hey, they're looking for some summer help in terms of traveling around the country in terms of production and setting up in the ring crew. Would you be interested?" A dream come true.
Right.
So here it was, a first trip to California, and off I go, driving the Brother Love set all the way across the country in the back of a U-Haul truck, and all by myself, and get to Sacramento, California. And, the rest of the 2 years was, a lot of different interesting, crazy stories.
Nice. Now, what made you want to become a wrestler? Seeing that you were already in the business in a way, you know what I mean? Like doing the ring crew into the #1 company in the United States.
Yeah.
So what made you decide?
It's just, being around it, being around the guys. And I think it was just like one day, it was two things. Tony Gurria said basically, he said, "Mike, why don't you try to get into some ring announce?" And I said, "I really don't want to ring announce." But Fuji, who I used to see on the road all the time because he was managing Demolition at the
Right.
time, he said, "Well, why don't you go learn how to work?" And I said, I knew Kowalski was back home, and I used to see Walter sometimes at the venues. And one thing led to another, and next thing you know, I was going to Pleasant Street to see Keller.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, real quick before I get to the next question, I have to ask: Did you ever see Mr. Fuji pull any ribs?
Oh, yeah.
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 You weren't around for the dog one, right?
No, no.
But I was a big Tanaka and Fuji fan. They were one of the first tag teams
Yeah.
I saw on TV. Yeah. But now, like you just mentioned, you were trained by the late great Walter Killer Kowalski. What was the very first meeting like?
I remember, walking up the stairs, you hear so many guys allude to what it's like walking up the stairs and hearing the noise of the guys getting body slam in the ring. And, unbeknownst to me in terms of, what am I going to encounter? And there's this, imposing guy, Killer Kowalski. And, we hit it off, and he was running class, and, he had a full house, and one thing led to another, and, got into it there.
Nice. Now this episode's all about you, but I heard you tell this story on a podcast.
Yeah.
The wrestling podcast about nothing with Jamie J. McKelvey was stepping in for Brian Malonis and Mike Crockett.
Yeah.
But I have to ask if you could please tell us a story that I heard on the WPAN of what it's like being in the backstage area with Walter Killer Kowalski, because I love that story. It's amazing.
It's interesting, Walter, with the presence that he has, he's backstage and he's walking around, and as you probably heard, his guys just basically stop in their tracks. And even Vince, as busy as Vince is, he'll see Walter out of the corner of his eye, and he'll take the time to go speak to him, 5 or 10 minutes, and just to catch up. And I mean, it's just, from top to bottom with where there's like a receiving line in terms of guys just wanting to say hello or say thank you. Again, just, paying their respect for Walters in terms of being a pioneer and, for, you know, the opportunities he created for so many guys, you know, people giving him the respect that, you know, that he deserved.
Excellent. We're going to get into the fan questions.
Sure.
As I told you earlier, I'm related to referee Rich Landon. It throws a lot of people off because I've never been seen with them. You
Well,
know?
I'll tell you a funny story.
Yeah.
My father used to cut his hair.
That was right there. Was the first thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Your dad cut his hair because he said he told me it's hollow trivia, and then he made a statement.
Yeah.
Like, where's the question? So I kind of turned. 30 years ago, I moved to Lynn, Mass. I got my hair cut at the barbershop close to my house.
Yeah.
Years go by before I joined Killer School and met you.
Yeah.
And do you know what he's talking about? And it's,
Yeah,
your dad cut his hair.
Yeah.
Next question is from Nathan Fuller. Nathan sends questions every week, watches religiously. Thank you very much, Nathan. He wants to know, between the both of us, did you like the Hell in the Cell pay-per-view last night? Did you happen to see it?
Unfortunately, I was out with the family. I didn't get a chance to see it.
Yeah, I watched a little of it, and I liked it. I thought it was good. But then again, I'm not one of those fans that nitpicks. I can
Right.
go to any show. I take it for what it is and enjoy it.
That's right.
You know, I'm not very critical of anything in the wrestling business.
it's
'cause I'm
hard
not
work.
in the business.
Right. It's hard work.
Right. And I already asked that, the Mr. Fuji one. Joe Moakley wants to know, who was the person that you mentored, trained, that you are most proud of their success? And I know it's like asking who your favorite child is, but he's still curious.
You know, it is a tough question. I mean, I think for me, whether the guys that made it and the girls that made it, I think all of them have you know, for me, they have a special place in terms of, you know, with what they brought to the table and how they got there. I mean, we can talk about, you know, Tommaso, Handsome Johnny. We can talk about Kofi, Chris Nowinski, Brian Black. You know, each of the guys have their, you know, their own unique challenges in terms of how they ended up in the positions that they did. And even for the guys that, you know, didn't end up making it, I looked at it was with where we were creating success stories outside the ring as well, in terms of that they could go into society and be better people. And that was probably the other thing that we know, Walter and I, and even at Chaotic, was the big thing for us was, not only are we teaching wrestling, but we're making a difference with our students in terms of who they are and how they're carrying themselves in terms, because that's what society needs, and that was important to us.
Nice. Well, a follow-up question, Zach, because
Sure.
it's very hard to pick, you know, like your favorite kid or your favorite student. Is there anyone that didn't make it, you know, out of just the independents, that surprises you that they didn't make it?
Yeah, Arch Kincaid, I always thought he had that unique quality or that it factor in terms of his ability, promo-wise. John Walters, from his ability work-wise, his work rate was always top-notch, solid today, can still work. Vince Vicalo,
Yeah.
smaller guy, but again, could get in there and go. So probably those couple guys.
Nice. Yeah, those guys were all awesome. John just made his return.
Yeah, I saw
Thursday.
that.
I didn't go. I really wish I did, but I'm a big fan of John Walters. So, John, nice to have you back.
Yeah.
Also, real quick, too, you know Ryan Waters at all?
No.
Well, Ryan just retired.
Okay.
So, good luck in your retirement, or what's the saying? Good luck in your
Future endeavors.
Future endeavors. There you go. Joe Moakley also wants to know, what is your favorite memory of Walter Kowalski?
No, great question. I think for me, from a memory perspective, opportunity is Walter giving me an opportunity to take over his school and carry on his name and teach and continue with that platform, and again, taking Killer Kowalski's name and creating that environment with where we were creating, top-notch workers, in the independents today in New England, back when I was, had the opportunity to become his head trainer. I think that's the biggest piece, and, with what it allowed me to do outside the ring as well, for, Walter giving me, that opportunity, which was a huge privilege.
Right, nice. So George Carroll has a question. He says, what are up-and-coming guys and girls missing today?
Good question. Like I've always said, the little things will always get you noticed. Right. And I think if I was a young talent starting out today, one of the things that I would focus on, and if I had an opportunity to get in front of the people that are going to make the decisions in terms of whether I'm going to get hired or not hired, because first impressions are lasting impressions, and right. Getting that opportunity again sometimes might not come around for a period of time. So when that opportunity does come, again, as you know, as people probably say, is pay attention to your basics and make people know or realize that you're a good mechanic in the ring, and your work will speak for itself, because I've got plenty of guys out back that can do flips and do this and do that, but can you go from point A to point B with where it makes sense and with where, you're going to catch someone's eye because you transition well.
Nice. Rich Landon has another one, and there's a picture. It's a picture of you, Jim McCarthy,
Yep.
Goldberg,
Yep.
and The Rock. And Rich wants to know, can you explain that picture?
Yeah. Got a phone call at home. It happened to be Pat Patterson. He said, Mike, we're doing a pay-per-view in Worcester and I need some help. He says, I'm looking for a place to put together the pay-per-view match. Can I come by the school? And so we had class that day, and then we had to, shuffle all the students out. And so it was interesting. Goldberg ends up showing up first, and he was real quiet, kind of stuck to himself, went off to the side, and then Rocky showed up. And, you talk about electrifying, and one of the real interesting things is when he walked in the door, just that aura, that presence with what he had, you just knew, that he was unique and he was special. And, we spent 2 hours putting together the pay-per-view match there that night, and it was a lot of fun. And I went and saw it the following night, and it was good to see how Rock did his thing and how Pat put different pieces of the puzzle in at different points in terms of really trying to get the people where they needed to be, and how they went into their finish. So it was a good learning lesson.
Nice. Now, Pat Patterson, one of the greatest minds
Yeah.
of all time in the wrestling business.
Yeah.
No, I just read his book too.
Yep.
Awesome book. The second picture is of Stephanie McMahon, Triple H, Killer,
Yeah.
and yourself.
Yeah.
Same question.
So that particular day at the Chaotic Training Center, from a business perspective, we were trying to put together a developmental deal with the office. And, we'd had some meetings with them up in Stamford, Connecticut. And Stephanie and Hunter decided they wanted to come see the school with what we were all about. And again, Triple H paying homage to Walter, wanted to stop in and see him as well. And twofold, he wanted to see the school, talk to the students, see with what we were doing, with what we were all about. And then, at the end, Stephanie and I and Triple H and Walter just having an opportunity to get together and kind of talk about some old times and with what our aspirations were.
Nice. I didn't write this question down. I just remembered it in my head from my friend Dan Bollier. He wants to know, could you envision Ricochet as the face of the WWE in a year or two? Or a couple of years, whenever.
A couple of years, it's see how things unfold over a period of time and with where they want to position them. So it's hit or miss.
Right. I only asked that because I told him I could see it. So there's something about the kid, even when he comes out of the curtain, he just has something.
That
I
it
don't want
factor.
to. I don't want to say like The Rock, but it's actually
Yeah.
kind of like that. So when I told Dan I could see him being, the next big, maybe one of the next big stars, and he called him a mid-carder. So you heard it here. Next question from Jake Olette. He said, how did Walter influence your teaching style?
It's interesting. Walter in the beginning, for me, he was gruff, and he was rough around the edges, and that's kind of with what I thought was the way to teach, and that's kind of how I started out, and over a period of time, I ended up getting away from that style, and Walter used to bark at me in terms of, you did this wrong, in many different type of adjectives.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's how I remember Walter in terms of getting after me, and sometimes I did the same thing, but like I said, from a coaching perspective, each student or each athlete is different, and you got to have a different approach in terms of how you want them to get from point A to point B.
Right. And like you said, not everybody's the same.
No.
I find that out at my job.
Yep.
The two guys that work, they don't have the same work ethic that
Nope,
I do.
nope, right.
Gene, I butcher names all the time. Gene Caiazzo?
Gene, oh yeah, Gene,
Gene-
yeah.
He wants to know, can you ask Coach, what is the style that the WWE looks for in their athletes' performers compared to the in-ring style of other top promotions, such as Ring of Honor, Impact, New Japan Wrestling? Thanks, Gene.
No, good question. That their work's solid.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the biggest piece, right? Is that, with what they're putting out from a product is solid, it's believable, it's credible. There's no holes in it. It's believable, it's logical, and it's going to garner emotional interest from the people that are either watching on TV or sitting on the stands, with where you can take them on that emotional roller coaster from the beginning bell to the end of the bell, with where people, from a performance standpoint, are finally, hopefully, out of their seats and standing up in terms of when the referee goes to count three, that the performers, have done their job from a reaction standpoint is probably the biggest piece.
Okay. Thank you, Gene. That's the first time Gene asked a question, so much appreciated. Have you ever, this is for me.
Okay, sure.
Have you ever thought of managing guys you've trained, like under the name, Hollow Stable?
I never thought about it, but you never know.
Right? Let's see what else. We're going to be in the name game in a minute, but I want to talk more about, your training and stuff. And you had said, too, in the wrestling podcast about nothing, that some of your favorite people to work, and it was with the WWA, right? With Freddie Spada?
Yep.
And you had mentioned Jeff Jarrett.
Yep.
And then there was somebody else. I can't remember who it was now.
We worked with the Headbangers, Double J a lot. Who else was there? God, there was a bunch of them.
Yeah. Well, how was it? Obviously, working with Jeff Jarrett, you obviously enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime that you have an opportunity to work with a seasoned veteran or a pro like Double J is methodic in terms of how they're putting together their matches. And basically for us, it was the beginning and was a little bit in the middle and the end, but really just understanding. I remember one time we were working together and we did a double down and I was starting to move and he said, "Don't move." And he says, "Let the referee get to 9 and then go to roll on top of me." And typically, indie guys today, they're rolling at 3 and 4 because they want to get to the next. They want to get to the next spot, right? And that stuck with me with where he's building and building and building in terms of pulling him in, and finally, as we start to go and we start to get into it, and I start to come back, and people are really starting to go, and those little things stick with you, and from nuances with where that's what working is all about. It's not going into the next spot with where they can't digest with what's just happened. It's letting them feel and see the emotional value in terms of what you're trying to do with your work to create or garner that interest. When the referee, like I said, goes to count 3, they actually care and they're not on their phones. They're not going to get popcorn. Yeah. That's that you've done your work, your job as a performer, because people are paying attention to you.
Nice. And I love Jeff Jarrett. I'm a huge fan of Memphis old wrestling. I
Yeah.
still watch it.
Yeah.
I'll watch it maybe twice a week. I go to YouTube and watch it.
And it's interesting. I remember I'll reminisce a little bit. The first time I had an opportunity, I worked with Tito Santana. It was the first star that I worked with, and I was a heel and he was the face. And I think I ended up taking 3 or 4 bumps that entire match. And we did some time over at the old Waltham IBW Hall. And I came out of the ring. I went back to the dressing room. And I said, "Geez, I just took 3 or 4 bumps. I worked with Tito. He took real good care of me. The place was going crazy." And I says, "If I did that with an independent guy, I would have taken 25 bumps and I would have hoped for half." I grant you, it's a star, but it's with what we did, when we did it, why we did it, and with where we needed to be. Really is, was again creating that art in terms of, like I said, when you go to count 3, people are with you.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. All the guys you've trained, you taught them right. You taught them well.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to cover. All right. When you were wrestling independents around here, you really worked mostly for the WWA and Chaotic?
A little bit for Chaotic.
Yeah.
Walter, when he was running his shows, I mean, he was running religiously. I was working for him a lot. Spada was running a lot. Chaotic a little bit, because when I ended up becoming a trainer, I kind of just, not that I didn't want to be one of the boys, I wanted to teach, and then I wanted them to have an opportunity to work, so I kept that separate.
Okay. Did you ever work for Tony Rumble?
Yeah. Tony Rumble, yeah.
Because, his shows were
Yeah,
great,
yeah.
especially when Walter stopped running. Actually, they were probably running for a while at the same time, correct?
Walter, there was Rumble, there was Richard Burns that was running for a while.
USWF.
USWF.
Yeah,
We did some road trips up to Canada and all sorts of good things. We actually even had some fun with Rich Landon throwing his hat outside the car, and he was all bent out of shape.
I believe that. All right, so let's get into the name game. You've seen my show, so you bring up a story, whatever you want.
Sure.
Let's start off with Vince Vicalo.
Oh, one of my all-time favorites. Again, good guy, great student, just a sponge, wanted to learn. I pushed him hard.
Yeah.
I did, and it's you and I were talking a little bit about earlier in terms of in-ring, out of the ring, and outside the school or life. and Vince had, sent me a note the other day, and again, thanking for with where he is today because of the things that we were able to do and teach him. So that's, the payoff in itself as a whole, and with where, guys are truly appreciative, that you impacted their lives outside of wrestling.
All right. And I hope you're watching this too, Vince, all right? Because I told you I was going to be talking about you. His old tag team partner,
Yeah.
Hurricane John Walters.
Again, they basically, I think they started together at the same time.
Right.
I remember John, 170 pounds, struggled with side headlock takeovers, couldn't get them, but hell of an athlete, hell of a worker, solid, good guy, understood. I wish he had an opportunity to go on to do more, but I guess he's back in New England now for a little bit. He and I actually spoke not too long ago. We're going to try to get together and go see Bo Douglas over at Belltime and see some of the students over there to try to give back to them.
Right. That's awesome because he's lived out west for a
Yeah,
while.
yeah.
It's great to see him back.
Yeah.
How about the voice of New England,
Rich
Mr.
Palladino?
Rich Palladino. Another great guy.
Yep, I've known Rich for 20 years. I mean, God, he's been the face of chaotic wrestling for, actually, Jamie and I were just talking about him. Again, real gentleman, good guy, does an excellent job. Unfortunately, I wish he would have got an opportunity to do some color stuff with WWE.
Right.
But, you never know.
Right. Oh, definitely. So professional. Yeah. How about a guy that's coming back on? He's been on twice. He's coming back in December. Tony Roy.
Poo-poo on
Yeah,
you, Tony.
poo-poo, yeah.
Tony Roy. Again, I had many matches with Tony. Had a lot of fun working with him in the ring. Super easy, just a class act.
Now, was he at Killers before?
Yeah.
Oh, he was there first.
He was there.
Yeah.
He was a couple of years ahead of me. And to Tony's credit, I had an opportunity to work with him a lot at the school. Good teacher. Willing to give back to the students. Good guy.
Yeah, he really is.
Good guy.
How about your old tag team partner, Duke Dalton?
Oh God, where do I start? We were the worst tag in New England, that worst tag team in New England history. He carried me more than great guy. We live close to each other, probably about 0.8 of a mile, right down the street from one another. We've had a lot of fun. Good guy. Can't say enough about him. Still friends today. Just class act.
Awesome. How about former NWA tag team champions, members of the Brotherhood, Eric Sprazier, Knuckles Nelson?
Oh yeah, yep. Dukes and I actually worked a lot against those guys. Eric could work, good. Knuckles, same thing, good workers. Had a lot of good matches with those guys over the years.
Nice.
Yep.
It's weird. Like I see on Facebook, Eric's just so big now.
Yeah.
But I remember when he first started,
Yeah.
he was not that big.
No.
He was a small, skinny guy. Well, not short or anything like that. You know what I mean? But just a
Mm-hmm.
lot, weighed a lot less. How about Steve Bradley?
Yeah, Steve Bradley. He worked for Freddie Spada and I, or Freddie Spada. We did a lot of shows up in Manchester. Hell of a worker. Had a good run for WWE in terms of never got pulled up, but did a lot down in their developmental territories. Did a lot of work with Kurt Angle when he was down there, and
Right.
did a lot of training with him. Again, another solid performer.
Yeah. Because they were in Memphis. They
Yep.
went down
Yeah.
together, and I
Yeah.
had a great feud. I actually watched a couple of matches on YouTube of those guys. How about, I think, has to be the fastest guy to get to the WWE that you trained, Kofi Kingston.
Yeah, Kofi was interesting. I remember, as you and I were talking earlier, it was a Saturday afternoon. The office had sent 4 agents to the school, so they wanted to see with what we had there from a talent perspective, and because we were trying to put together a developmental deal,
Yep.
and so the agents ended up showing. And the interesting thing that day about Kofi was, to his credit, he didn't work like a typical indie guy. I mean, he stood out in a positive way, not with
Right.
where it was loud and crazy, but he did all the little things well. He moved well. He had a good look, just good ring presence, and they picked up on that. And I think that they wanted to sign him that day, and spent some time down in Deep South and down in FCW, and I got to see him not too long ago over in Manchester, and he's working every day. He's doing well for himself.
Sure is. That New Day gimmick, man.
Yeah.
It took a while. Fans weren't buying it
Nope.
at first. But
Nope.
sure enough, they made it. How about, you talked about him a little bit earlier, off air. Warbeard Hansen
Yeah.
from the War Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. I mean, I remember Todd, 17 years old, coming up the stairs at Kowalski's with his dad, sitting watching class, and finally getting enough money to come to the school and starting at Kowalski's, following me to Chaotic when, I transitioned over there. All the injuries that he's had, and now to kind of look and see with where he's at and with what he's doing, all his work over in Japan. Again, like I said earlier, every guy or girl, their story is different, and he's got a hell of a story in terms of with where he's ended up, and I really look forward to seeing him on a larger scale, and it's only be a matter of time.
Yeah. The great tag team. Man.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Raymond Rod, and I love the dynamic of how Ray's is a smaller guy, but he's the powerhouse.
Yeah.
Todd's a bigger guy, and he's the the high flyer.
Yeah.
It's just a great tag team.
And probably the other thing about Warbird, and you've mentioned a couple of them, is those guys that they don't forget. They're very appreciative in terms of the opportunities that they have. So that goes a long way. It says a lot about their character in terms of who they are.
Yeah. And that comes from being trained and being raised right by your parents.
Absolutely. Yep.
How about one of my favorite hot smash wrestlers, Biff Busick, Oni Lorcan?
Yep. Biff, I would say probably about a year ago, I got to spend a week down on the developmental at the Performance Center, and Biff was there and got to see him a lot. Again, working his tail off, really making a difference down there. Just a real student of the game. And then the other opportunity that he and I had was we got to sit with Terry Taylor and really dissect one of his matches. So that was interesting. And again, I couldn't be happier for Biff. He's doing well. And again, I'm looking forward to seeing him on the larger scale sometime soon.
Yeah, me too. And what a tag team him and Danny Burch got now. I really enjoy those guys. The NXT Heavyweight Champion, Tommaso Ciampa.
Yeah, Tommaso. Think about the first opportunity he had to go to TV, and he did the thing with The Undertaker, and then next thing you know, he's getting signed to a developmental deal, and had a short little stint, and they basically said, go find yourself, go find your way. And think about this, with where he could have taken that and said, you know what, I'm done.
Right.
But, he persevered, he grinded, he worked all over Europe, and just, again, when he first got an opportunity to go back to NXT, there was no guarantee there for him. And
I did not know that.
Yeah, and then he worked himself into a job, and now Hunter looks at him as a real leader within the NXT. It says a lot about him in terms of with where he was at and with where he's gone. And again, I couldn't be prouder of those guys in terms of what they're doing. They're really paving the way, for guys that came out of New England.
Right. And like you said, about Tommaso, like he could have just walked away, but he went trained with Harley Race. He just wanted to get better.
Harley Race, he OVW, he just he wasn't taking no for an answer.
Right.
None of those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Aaron Stevens.
Yeah, Teen Idol. Aaron, I remember his father used to drive him all the way from Worcester. He was 14 years old, probably about 150, 160 pounds. And then just, Dr. Tom really took a liking to him.
Yeah.
And one thing led to another. He ended up in the developmental system. Again, got let go find your way. Dr. Tom got released, and new regime came in. Aaron ended up coming back and, again, had a good little run for himself. So he did well.
Yeah, he did. And then he was down in Ohio for a while.
Yeah.
And then when he was under contract, they sent him to Puerto Rico.
Yep.
And kind of forgot he was there.
Yeah. Making a good living.
But I'll tell you, always was impressed with him.
Yep.
Always. Even from the early days when the Chaotic shows were at the Lowell Elks off the Boulevard.
Yep.
I remember a lot of those shows. How about Johnny Curtis, Fandango?
Johnny Curtis from Maine. He spent a little time at the Chaotic Training Center. Go back and forth with him a little bit every now and then. Again, you look at his duration in terms of being in WWE. He's been there for a long period of time now. It just goes to show you that he's versatile. He's willing to deal with whatever they ask, and that says a lot right there with where he's got a job and he's done well.
Nice. Now the next two guys was tag team, and if I'm not mistaken, you trained with these guys. Perry Saturn and John Cronus. My favorite team, the Eliminators.
Yeah, no, they were great. Perry really raised the bar with John as well. John was a great athlete. Perry was no nonsense, with what they did in ECW, and got to work with Perry, some dark matches in WWE. Great talents.
Did you wrestle him in Lowell at the auditorium on his tryout match?
No.
Okay.
No.
'Cause I was there when he had a try. He was the Iron Horseman. And Chris Duffy was there too.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to get to him.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, what a talent he was. See, Slick Wagner Brown.
Yep. I think he's got a school in Connecticut
Yeah,
now.
Test of Strength.
Test of Strength. Again, another good performer, solid worker.
Nice. That's just real off my youngest,
Yeah.
her favorite wrestler.
Really?
Slick. Loves Slick. She doesn't like wrestling as much anymore. But how about the first female we'll bring up right now, Brittany Brown.
Brittany Brown. She was Walter's champion for many years. Worked on a lot of shows with her, and I really don't know her that well.
Great work of
Good.
Great work. I remember watching her a lot. How about someone that I think you've had a hand in training, April Hunter?
Yep. So interesting thing for with April is Kevin Kelly at the time was working in talent relations. I was teaching over at Walters, and he'd called me and said we're going to be sending you a girl from Vegas, and I said okay, great. And so we get into it, and he says she was working for WCW, and she was a Playboy model, and so April showed up, and like everyone else, put her through the paces, pushed her hard, and she had an opportunity, and things kind of fell off by the wayside, but so.
I wonder if she didn't join Scott Steiner's Freaks and decided to really try to get in there wrestling wise. I know she wanted to get in there, but I think she could have had a good run.
I mean, from a girl perspective, she had good size.
Yeah.
She could move well. So you never know.
Right. How about you brought him up earlier, Jim Kettner.
Oh,
Guy's
God.
been around the wrestling business over
Jeez.
50 years.
I love Kettner. Denny's after shows, hanging out 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. His Super 8. Out of all the promoters, in the country, Jim Kettner is revered as a guy that truly gets it.
Right.
He had his promotion for, I think over close to 40 years in
Yeah.
terms of the ECWA. Again, a good friend. We talk often. Had a lot of laughs. So a great, great guy. Couldn't say enough about him.
I love the Super 8 tournament.
Yeah.
And a local guy just won it.
Oh yeah.
Richard Holiday.
Oh, okay.
Paul Roman's. I
Yep.
think Paul
Oh,
Roman
yeah.
trained him.
Yep.
How about the great Pat Patterson?
Pat Patterson. Again, known him for many years, probably 20, 25 years. Good to me in terms of when I was starting out. He was around, and we ended up becoming friends. He was actually friends with Freddie Spada, and again, in terms of being able to have a friendship with him and being able to either talk to him, pick up the phone, or ask different questions, and what's the office looking for? What direction should we be going in? What are the things that are that are important in terms of development of the students or the athletes that they were looking for? Throwing finishes at them, or creativity. I think for me, in terms of what I was. When I took over Walters in terms of teaching, that responsibility itself and as a whole is huge, but not knowing some of the answers or some of the pieces, and then having, a veteran like him with where, you can go and get that solid information with where as you and I were talking about earlier, there's a lot of misinformation out there. Right. And I think, the old timers, they shoot straight, and they tell you how it is, and with what the things that are important, and with what Vince might be looking for, or what the agents might be looking for, and with what separates some guys from others. And so he was huge for me in terms of just really being able to a great sounding board in terms of helping develop athletes to go on to bigger and better things. And he was really appreciative. We'd send guys to TV. And either he would call me or I would call him, after Tuesday. He might be sitting at the airport, and I'd say, well, how did the guys do? And and he'd give me a rundown, because he knew that they were Kowalski's guys. Right. And Pat had a real connection to Walter from back when he was a little kid, but just made time to make sure that those guys were doing well, and he'd give me a complete rundown. So I was very fortunate in that respect.
Right. A lot of people around here probably don't know this, but he really broke into the business in Boston, correct?
Yeah, he left Montreal with probably, I think, a suitcase and $18 in his pocket. Right. And he says, I'm going to do this. And he's very, very poor. And I mean, just to think with what he's created today, you know, with Vince, and you know, I think he's 82 years old now, and or 78, something like that. And you know, got to catch up with him a couple weeks ago over in Manchester, and you know, Vince says, you know, he still values with what I have to bring to the table, which is, you know, huge. And again, one of those guys that all the boys gravitate to because he's got such a keen mind in terms of what should go where and when and why, and, you know, being able to garner that reaction at certain times from an emotional standpoint. And that's a gift.
Nice. Well, I'll tell you, with Pat, around here, most of the guys know him as a singles wrestler.
Yeah. Great tag team.
Oh, man, unbelievable.
Ray Stevens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. Ray Stevens.
Talk about generating heat in the Cow Palace.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Brian Privatera, a friend of mine. Like I said, I don't have a lot of friends in the wrestling, so I'm starting to become friendly with them. But Brian's a great guy.
Funny story, or a short story. My first house with where I lived, Brian's parents and Brian lived a couple houses up, and at the time I was, you know, teaching at the Chaotic Training Center, and Brian showed up there, spent some time there, and then kind of ventured off into his own. And you know, I see him now. He's, you know, on Facebook. He's out doing his thing, and hey, he's having fun. He's enjoying himself. He's trying to entertain, and you know, he's making people happy. That's what it's all about.
Right. Newly married too.
That's right too.
Yes. The Kingpin, Brian Malonis.
Oh, Kingpin. Again, you know, here's a 17-year-old kid climbing up the stairs at Kowalski's. Again, just really happy for the fact with where he's at now with Ring of Honor. You know, he's had a great run in Chaotic. Another guy that I thought, you know, he was close to, you know, getting signed by WWE.
Right.
I know he was, you know, having some good conversations back and forth with John Laurinaitis with what, you know, they were looking for. You know, they just couldn't get over that hump. But, you know, you never say never. You know, now he's on a large scale, and, you know, the writers might see something and opportunities might present themselves. So you never know.
Nice. Gorgeous Chris Duffy.
Oh God, I had many matches with him. Great to work with, easy, fun. Always had to go over. It's always had to go over.
Yeah.
But unfortunate with that he passed away. Him and Brian Walsh, just
another guy.
Two class guys.
Right.
Can't say enough good things about those guys.
Yeah, real quick, I met Chris Duffy at a show at the Lowell Memorial Auditorium.
Yeah.
And just bumped into him. And I know who he was, talked to him for a few minutes, but I mean, he treated me like he knew me for 20 years.
Yeah.
He just was that nice,
Yeah.
you know? Was he always like that?
Always. Just a real gentleman.
Nice.
Yeah.
How about Demon, Luis Ortiz?
Yeah, Louis was, he was with Walters, he was with Aaron, he was with Vern, he was with Mike Studd. I had a great crop. There was a whole bunch of Arch. Again, just a real good in-ring, solid performer. I think he's doing some teaching now for Joe Moakley up in
Atlantic Pro Wrestling in Salisbury.
In Salisbury.
Yep.
So I'm happy to see that, you know, Louis, giving back and
Yeah.
teaching the young guys, and hopefully he's teaching them right. And so good guy.
Yeah, definitely. These next three guys are kind of looped together because they're the best friends. I call them the Three Musketeers, along with we'll start with Sean Gorman. How's that?
Sean, it's funny. I don't know Sean that well.
Okay.
I really don't.
All right. Eddie Edwards.
I don't know Eddie that well either.
Okay. How about DC?
Just a little bit from Kowalski's, and that's it.
Okay. George Carroll?
Yeah, George. George is interesting. I think he's got an interesting mind. I think at some point you'll see him find his niche. I think he'll do well for himself. I've always enjoyed talking to him. Loves the business.
Yeah.
I think he can bring some real value. I think if some promotions here in New England were wise, they could utilize George from a talent standpoint in terms of as an agent.
Right.
But again, they should reach out to him.
Definitely. Now, he's working for New Japan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, the United States ambassador.
Yeah.
He's doing a great job. Great job, George. How about, did you train Peter Malloy?
Pistol Pete
Yeah.
Malloy. Yep.
I liked him.
He was a great family, great dad. Again, Pistol came to me when he was a young kid. Father used to bring him, Saturdays and Sundays at Kowalski's, followed me to Chaotic. I can't say enough about him. Went on to become a U.S. Marine.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Nice.
So proud of him in that respect. See him every once in a while on Facebook. again, good guy.
Nice. And Andre Lyons.
Yeah.
I loved him in the next guy too.
Jesus, way back.
Yeah.
Andre, I haven't talked to him in a long time, but again, great student, good athlete.
He wrestled in the Super 8.
Oh, that's right too.
Yeah, he
Forgot
did.
that.
It was one of his last matches,
Yeah.
if not his last match, from what I heard. How about what's that?
Him and Minnie.
Yeah, that's next.
Yeah,
Mighty Minnie. I love those
Mighty
guys.
Minnie. Yeah, and another one. Those two guys, they come to school, roll around. Just two guys that love the business.
Right. I wish they were still in it.
I do.
You know.
Yeah.
How about Matt Bloom?
Matt Bloom.
Yeah.
He was a Kowalski guy. Matt and I were. He got connected to George Stale and had a great run in WWE and spent a lot of time over in Japan. And then I got to spend a week with him at the Performance Center. He invited me down there and kind of got to see with what It was interesting to kind of. It was kind of I don't want to say payback, but it was really nice to see. With what they were doing at the Performance Center, as Matt and I talked about, is back to the basics. In the different rings, they were doing different things.
Right.
But again, it goes back to the foundation and the different coaches going through the different stages. But I think Matt is doing a great job down there, and with the development. And again, as you can see, the people that they're turning out, and the people that they're bringing in.
Right.
And I think probably the biggest thing that that you see with what they're doing overseas in Europe, and is with where they're finding their athletes. There was a tremendous amount of diversity there with where it was football players, it was basketball players, it was gymnasts. And there was probably, if I remember correctly, there might have been maybe 8, 10 tops indie guys.
Yep.
And you and I were talking about a little bit earlier with where it's easier for them to take a guy or a girl that doesn't have a lot of those bad habits and really kind of teach them the WWE way.
Right.
So again, lesson for all of us is, not that has to be the way, but really do the little things well that will put you on their radar and get you have an opportunity to get your foot in the door, because that's what they're looking for, right? Is what separates you, because you can do the little things well. How are your feet? How are your hands? What are you doing with your face? How's your body position? All those little things that with where, that are going to make you from a green guy to a polished worker. Those are the things that are important. That's what Matt looks for.
Right.
Plus, you have to be on time.
Yeah. Now, when you first walked into that building, how impressed were you?
Great facility, from the TV production to the medical staff to the gym to the rings, just the environment for the students themselves as a whole. It's top notch. You couldn't ask for anything better. So if you're on the radar and you're getting an opportunity to go there, go prepared,
Right.
go in shape. Stand out for the right reasons. Do the little things well. Listen, be coachable.
Yeah.
Because if you can end up there, you're putting yourself in a real good spot. You might only get one opportunity, so really truly take advantage of it, because you
Right.
never know when you're going to get it again.
Yeah. Tommaso Ciampa first.
First yeah.
Definitely. How about Triple H?
Triple
He's
H.
from Nashua.
Yeah, again, another Kowalski guy, and it's funny, you think of, Matt ended up becoming the head coach down there. I ended up teaching up here. Triple H, with what he's been able to
Yeah.
bring in terms of how WWE's evolved.
Yeah.
So, you can't say enough. Tommaso said, he's just relentless in terms of always trying to push his talent to become better, always willing to give back, just a true student of the game. And that's what you want when you sit in that position, is how are you challenging your talent to grow and trying to be creative and be noticed.
Nice. Guy that hits me every blue moon on Facebook. Bull Montana.
Jeez. I haven't seen him in ages.
No, you haven't?
No, I haven't. Probably at my last Rumble show.
Nice. Bo Douglas. You brought him up earlier. How you're
Yeah.
going to be heading down to the Bell Time Club.
Class act, really another Kowalski affiliate.
Yep.
I think he's really trying to do a great job with Bell Time over there in Wakefield, Mass. If you're a student starting out, again, go see Bo. He'll definitely teach you right. So couldn't ask for a better environment.
Nice. And you had brought up earlier about the things that you need when you're training. Now,
Yeah.
one thing he really does teach is respect.
Yeah.
It's big. It's big on Bo's, in his school. How about you were on his very first show for New England Championship Wrestling, Sheldon Goldberg.
Sheldon, yep. I've known Sheldon for many years. I was his first champion. We did that in Connecticut. had a lot of fun working for him. Go back and forth. I haven't spoken to him in a while, but again, pioneer, brings a lot of history to the wrestling business. He's up and promoting again now, I believe.
Yes.
Had a little health issue, but I've always enjoyed Sheldon.
Yeah, I like Sheldon
Yep.
a lot myself.
Good egg.
How about Big Woody? You know Big Woody?
I don't know Big
Okay.
Woody.
You already took Ray Stevens. Brian Walsh. You did mention him.
Yeah, Brian, again, got to have a lot of good matches with him and Chris. And interesting thing with Brian, he had an opportunity to work some dark matches with Shawn Michaels. And Shawn really pushed for him to try to get an opportunity to work for WWF at the
Right.
time. And it just never took place, but boy, could he go.
Wow, yeah, definitely. I want to talk about the upcoming talent that's out here now, okay? First, I'll bring him up. He's in NXT now, but what's your thoughts about, I know you to train him, but Donovan Dijak?
Again, he's in a great place down at the NXT. I haven't seen a lot of his work lately, to be honest with you.
Right.
I know that he did a lot of traveling here when he was in New England. And that's basically with what you're looking for. He put himself on the map. He got noticed, created opportunities for himself, and he's in the best possible place now in terms of being able to get to the next level. And hopefully he'll grab that opportunity.
Nice. This kid right here is really, I see big things for him. Christian Casanova. Have you seen Christian at all?
Yeah, I haven't seen his work, a lot of his work, to be honest with you. I've gone back and forth with him a little bit a while back, and some of the things I've seen with his in-ring work, just kind of give him some tidbits back and forth, and very appreciative of the comments that just trying to point him in the right direction.
I think you would have liked the tits too.
Yeah, exactly. Cut.
How about the guy that's doing a lot of training now at the New England Pro Wrestling Academy,
Yep.
Brian Fury?
Yep, Brian has taken over for Chaotic, and I guess he's got a lot of students up there, and he's training. And I've always said is train them right, teach them how to work, teach them respect, and the school will end up speaking for itself.
Nice. What do you think about him buying Chaotic too? I thought it was a good move, seeing that he has a place now for the students to work.
Well, if you think about it, they all work hand in hand together. So when I got involved with Chaotic, they realized that they needed to have a school to support the promotion.
Right.
So it's kind of a no-brainer. So from a business perspective, it definitely makes sense.
We'll take a quick break from the Navy, and seeing you brought that up. How you left Killers
Yeah.
and went to Chaotic.
Yeah.
And I know it caused some turmoil for you for a little bit.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little about that, and then the day that your doorbell rang a couple of years later? I think that's a great story.
Yeah, it was interesting. So Walter and I, we worked on a handshake, and at the time the school was busy in Malden. We were doing well, and I had my firstborn that was on the way and just built a house. And I had said to Walter, I said, God forbid, Walt, something ever goes wrong, one of the students ever get hurt, we've got to think about, an LLC in terms of, from a business perspective, protecting ourselves. And, unfortunately for Walter, made a lot of money in his day, but he'd gotten burnt, and so wasn't very trusting. And rightfully so, I get it, right? And so unfortunately, he and I had met with some attorneys trying to put something together, and just to, again, like I said, protect ourselves, and just couldn't get to that point from a business perspective. And the day came with where I had to say to him, I said, Walt, I'm going to part ways, and it's not with what I want to do, and not with where it's a good thing for either you or I. But so that day came, created a lot of heat in New England for me, and but again, it's it's a business thing, and looking after your family and the the overall well-being. So I went and did my thing at Chaotic, and Walter ended up working with I believe April and Wagner, that was teaching at his school, and probably 6 months, 8 months, and I was home at the time, and the doorbell rang, and geez, who the hell's here? And I didn't see anyone come down the driveway.
Right.
I opened the front door, and it's Walter. And I hadn't talked to Walter for a period of time, and I said to myself, he says, can I come in? Yeah, sure, come on in. And a little bit about Walter, from my wedding and to my kids being baptized, to everything, all the important things in my life, Walter was always a part of. So, there was a real bond there between he and I. And, again, like I've alluded to, you know, as I said earlier, think about if he didn't give me that opportunity to teach, and all the guys that you talked about on that list tonight, where would they be if Walter didn't put me in that position? So to make it interesting, he ended up coming in, him and Teresa, they sat down on the couch, you know, we talked for a little bit, and you know, Walter being a very proud guy and, you know, larger than life, he says, you know, unfortunately I made a mistake. And I said, well, what do you mean you made a mistake? He said, I should have listened to you. And I said, Walter, I said, you know, you and I always had a unique relationship, and he says, you know, can I come back? And I said, absolutely.
Nice.
And so Walter ended up coming to Chaotic on Saturdays and, you know, doing his thing there and giving his input and just, you know, being the icon that he was, with where people would want to gravitate and ask him questions and talk to him. And so that was the Walter story. I never expected to see Walter at my front door.
Right.
And but like I said, he put me in a tremendous position in terms of being able to teach, and you know, I took it serious with where, you know, I was looking after his name in terms of teaching. That's a huge responsibility from a respect standpoint, and world champion, and you know, you don't take that lightly. And some people that rubbed the wrong way in terms of what we were trying to do there, but it was in the best interest of everybody.
Nice. Jose Perez.
I don't know.
Okay. How about right now he's killing on the indies and he's wrestling all over. Retrosexual Anthony Green. You familiar with Anthony at all?
Yep. Anthony spent some time with me working at Hollow Stables.
Yep.
You know, like you said, he's out and about. He's doing his thing. He's doing a lot of traveling now. So hopefully he's getting, you know, creating good quality work, and he's getting noticed, and maybe some opportunities will, you know, present themselves for him.
Nice. Yeah, he's definitely killing it all over the place. Wrestling down for CZW, going up to Canada. It's nice to see the guys when they not just wrestling around here, they're breaking out to other places. His old tag team partner, Cam Zagami.
Yeah, another guy that spent some time at Hollow Stable and working with him in terms of, you know, trying to put those guys in the right spot. And it's great that I think that they're, you know, they're working outside of New England. But again, probably the big thing for all those guys is, you know, get good work, have good matches, you know, have your work be critiqued, you know, really just, you know, don't go drive for 2 hours and say, geez, my matches, you know, I had a great match. You know, what are some of the takeaways that are going to put you in a position with where, you know, you're learning and you're getting some good solid information, so you're growing as a performer as well. That's probably the biggest piece for all of these guys. It's great to travel.
Yeah.
But what do you get when you come back from the, you know, from behind the curtain from a constructive standpoint, with where, you know, you're getting some real good insight in terms of whether it be from a timing perspective or could have done something else on this spot to get a better reaction. It's understanding those pieces of the puzzle that are really important. So that's what really creates quality work. So when you go to work again, is, you know, some of those things in your archives are starting to register that with where now you're really starting to become in tune in terms of your audience. So it's just not those two guys. I don't mean those two guys, but, you know, you're working for the people. You're not working for the guy that's in the ring with.
Right. And I don't think, if you probably didn't know this, but Anthony Green was in the Super 8 this past year, too.
Yeah.
And Cam Zagami won the Chikara Young Lions Cup.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
These kids around here are killing it.
Yep.
Are you familiar with Christian Casanova's partner in Killanova, Triplicious?
I'm not.
At all?
No.
Okay. Is there anything that you want to talk about that we didn't get to? You know, maybe your school, you know, your address, and, you know, not your house address, of course.
Yeah. You know, probably, you know, for all the guys that are trying to, you know, make it today, whether they're, you know, happy working on the independents or they have aspirations to get to the next level, is, you know, have a plan and, you know, really try to execute that plan and understand with what you need to work on. And that's what's going to create that level of separation that, you know, that with where you're going to be in a position to, you know, get noticed in a good way, and with where you're going to be able to, you know, garner interest. Because you have to look at it from a business standpoint. You know, The Office, Japan, Ring of Honor, they're getting flooded in terms of, with, you know, guys and girls are trying to create opportunities for themselves. The big thing is what do you do from a performer that's going to separate you in a positive way from the rest of the pack, with where someone's going to want to invest money in you, and that you have the ability to sell tickets, and with where people want to continue to come back and see you, because you can draw, right? And drawing is not meaning just because of, you know, all your high spots, but people or fans are personally connected to you as a performer with where they're engaged, and they're buying into with what you're bringing for your work rate.
Right.
With where there's interest on a Sunday afternoon, they watched you work Friday night or they watched you work Saturday, and they're talking about you on Sunday at the family dinner, and they want to go back and see you in 2 or 3 weeks. And don't have them talk about you for all the wrong reasons with where they don't want to go back and see you again. Again, have your work be solid.
Yeah.
Little things count. A lot of people don't think that, but they really do.
Right.
It's with what makes you from an average mechanic to a great mechanic, from an in-ring performer. Have a briefcase in regards to in-ring and outside the ring.
Yeah.
Be coachable and be able to take constructive criticism from people that are willing to shoot straight and
Right.
tell you the truth. And don't take it personal with where, geez, he's picking on me. Because when people stop talking to you that are in the know, that's when you should say to yourself, how did I screw up?
Right. How about this one last quick story? We got a little over 2 minutes. You had told the story on the podcast with Jamie and Mike Crockett about the kid that Walter took off a show
Oh, outpatient.
and was all upset.
Outpatient.
Is that who that was?
That's who it was.
Oh, Jeremy.
Jeremy.
Yeah.
So there it was. Walter and I was sitting down at the old school. I was putting my boots on, and Walter had a show coming up on Friday night, and he had to make a change in the car.
Right.
It's one of those things that happen. And Jeremy was supposed to be working, I forget who. And so he ended up from Walter in front of I, just shaking hands.
Yeah.
And Walter said, Jeremy, unfortunately, I've got to take you off the show on Friday or Saturday. Not that he wanted to.
Right.
So next thing you know, Jeremy decides to get into it with Walter.
Oh,
and it's probably the wrong thing to
Right,
do.
right.
And just basically
But he
said-
was new.
He was new. He was
was
green,
new. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it was his birthday. He had to
Right.
go over.
Yeah, you know what I mean? He
So-
had a dream.
A dream. And so it kind of turned into some unpleasantries. And basically, Walter says, if you don't get out of my face, I'm going to push you down the effing stairs.
And Jeremy's a great guy, too.
Yeah.
But how about, we got a little over a minute, how about his former tag team, I think it was Criminally Insane, Jimmy Allen, Trooper Gilmore.
Trooper Gilmore. Now, there's a character.
He's always treated me. So I've known him for, for a
Good.
long time. He's
Yeah.
always treated me very well. Jason Rumble?
Yep. Again, Kowalski guy. I guess he's up in Maine now.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him in.
He's doing well up there running
Good.
shows and stuff.
Good.
That's another guy that's always been great to me.
Yep.
Do you know Pat Dillon?
Oh, yeah. Pat. Yep.
Great guy.
Super. I like Pat a lot. Yep.
And like I said, 3 years ago today, he sat right there with me on just a minute notice. I thought I could have Skype at first.
Yeah.
I was going to have Select, and they said, oh, Skype's not up yet. I'm like scrambling, like, what am I going to do? I called Pat. I only knew him for like 2 months. He said, what time you need me? I said, in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I'm on my way.
Yeah.
That's just the type of guy
No,
Pat is.
Pat Dillon's a good person. I actually got to spend a lot of time with him over at Bell Time. Again, I enjoy his company.
Mike, listen, I'd love to
Thank you.
have you on again.
Yeah.
So, guys, Mike Hollow, Leo Connors, we're out. Peace.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.